In the village Aburi they lived two men who believed that greatness no longer lived in shrines or crowns, but on green fields far away, beneath roaring stadium lights. To Kwadwo and Jelani, the greatest spirit of the age wore not royal robes, but a football jersey. And every morning, before the market had fully found its rhythm, their rivalry stirred, louder than the gong, sharper than a newly forged spear. Thank you for joining Frankie Stories. They say that where two rams fight, the grass beneath them suffers most. In the great market of Aburi, the grass had long been replaced by red dust beaten hard by countless feet. Yet suffering still found a home there. Every morning, the iron gong rang out, calling traders from their compounds like birds answering dawn. Women spread cloth on wooden tables, men arranged produce into proud towers, and the air filled with the smells of pepper, yam, smoke, and sweat. Aburi Market did not merely open, it awoke. Among the traders stood two men whose voices often rose above the rest. Kwadwo, the yam seller, wore confidence like a second skin. His smile was wide, his laughter quick, and his purse heavy from years of clever bargaining. Beside him traded Jelani, a seller of fine batik cloth, calm in manner, precise in speech, and known for fabric so well woven it seemed to drink in the light. Once the two men had shared jokes, meals, and stories. Now, an unseen crack had formed between them, for both men had begun to believe that greatness no longer lived in shrines or crowns, but on green fields far away, beneath roaring stadium lights. To Kwadwo and Jelani, the greatest spirit of the age wore not royal robes, but a football jersey. And every morning, before the market had fully found its rhythm, their rivalry stirred, louder than the gong, sharper than a newly forged spear. The sun had barely climbed above the rusted zinc roofs when Kwadwo began his sermon. He arranged his yams with deliberate care, stacking them high and straight, each tuber placed as though it were evidence in a case he was preparing to present. Customers passing by slowed their steps, already familiar with the ritual. When Kwadwo cleared his throat, it was never without purpose. That morning, he struck the pile with his fist, not in anger, but with conviction. Dust leapt into the air, and with it rose his voice. He spoke of league tables as if they were sacred scrolls, of seasons past as though they were ancient wars. Numbers, he declared, did not lie. They endured. They returned year after year with the same truth. His player, his chosen one, ran tirelessly, delivered consistently, and answered every doubt with proof written in goals and assists. This, Kwadwo insisted, was true greatness. Not the sudden blaze, but the steady flame that never went out. He waved his phone for emphasis, the screen glowing like an oracle. "Look!" he cried, calling both customers and rivals to witness. "Tell me, who else stands there season after season? Who else carries his team like a calabash of water on his head and never spills?" Some laughed, others nodded. A few clapped. Kwadwo drank in their reactions like palm wine. To him, football was not entertainment. It was testimony. Every match was a lesson, every statistic a moral truth. He spoke of discipline, of loyalty, of enduring greatness that did not need miracles. His words flowed freely, confident and relentless, drowning out the softer sounds of bargaining around him. Across from him, Jelani continued measuring cloth, though his hands had slowed. His eyes flicked up occasionally, watching Kwadwo preach with the fire of a man who believed the universe itself was on his side. Customers who came for batik lingered longer than necessary, drawn by the rhythm of the argument yet to come. And so, as the market fully awakened and the sun warmed the dust beneath their feet, Kwadwo finished his declaration with a satisfied smile. He had spoken his truth. Now, as always, he waited for thunder to answer rain. Jelani did not answer at once, and this silence unsettled the space between them more than any insult could have. He continued his work, drawing the measuring tape smoothly across a length of deep indigo batik patterned with symbols of birds and flowing rivers. His fingers were steady, practiced, the kind of hands that believed in patience. To anyone watching, It seemed as though Kwadwo's words had floated past him like smoke. But beneath Jelani's calm, something was gathering. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were sharp, not angry, but alert, like a sky moments before rain. He folded the cloth with care, set it aside, and then spoke. Not loudly, but clearly enough that nearby traders leaned in without realizing they had done so. "Kwadwo," he began almost kindly. "You speak of numbers as if they were spirits themselves. But even a child knows that counting footsteps does not tell you who truly leads the dance." A ripple of murmurs moved through the market. Jelani straightened his shoulders and continued, his voice growing firmer. He spoke of moments that could not be measured, of goals that changed the air in a stadium, of a single kick that silenced thousands before exploding into sound. "Your excellence," he said, "is like the thin rain of the dry season. It falls often, yes, but the ground remains thirsty. My player is thunder. He arrives once, and the whole sky remembers." He gestured broadly now, not with a phone but with open hands. He spoke of courage, of daring, of players who bent games to their will instead of fitting neatly into systems. "Some men," Jelani said, "are not born to be counted. They are born to be felt." Laughter and applause followed his words, and even those who supported Kwadwo's team could not deny the poetry in Jelani's argument. Kwadwo scoffed, shaking his head, but the confidence in his smile wavered. For the first time that morning, his response did not come immediately. Around them, the market buzzed louder, energized by the clash. Customers paused, elders frowned, and the dust beneath their feet seemed to stir. The rain had spoken. Now the thunder had answered. By the next market day, the rivalry had grown legs of its own. It no longer waited for provocation or proper morning greetings. It burst forth as soon as Kwadwo and Jelani saw each other, like two drums struck at the same time by different hands. Their words, once sharp but playful, now carried an edge that scraped the ears of anyone who lingered too close. Customers began to notice the change. A woman who came to buy yams paused midway through bargaining, her eyes darting nervously as voices rose behind her. A tailor seeking batik cloth hesitated, then quietly backed away when Jelani's tone hardened and Kwadwo responded with mocking laughter. What had once been entertaining theater was becoming an uncomfortable spectacle. People came to the market to trade, not to stand between clashing egos. As the days passed, the effects became clearer. The usual crowd thinned near their stalls. Footsteps hurried. Bargains were rushed. Some customers chose longer paths through the market just to avoid the growing storm. Even other traders began shifting their goods, complaining that the shouting chased away business like smoke chased bees from a hive. The elders noticed too. Men who had sat for decades beneath the shade of woven canopies began shaking their heads in silence. This was not how disagreements were meant to be carried. They whispered. Passion had a place, yes, but so did restraint. When the market bell rang at midday, it no longer brought relief. It only marked another moment when voices had grown too loud. Still, Kwadwo and Jelani did not see the damage clearly. Each believed the other was the cause. Each felt provoked, misunderstood, challenged. Pride stood between them like a wall built brick by brick with every argument. To back down now, either man felt would be to admit defeat, not just to a rival but to the world. And so the market suffered, not through fire or flood, but through noise. Where laughter once flowed, tension settled. Where friendship once stood, stubbornness now planted its feet. Like grass beneath fighting rams, the piece of Aburi Market bent lower each day, wondering how much more weight it could bear. There comes a moment in every community when silence becomes heavier than noise. In Aburi Market, that moment arrived on a slow afternoon when even the wind seemed reluctant to pass between the stalls. Business dragged, tempers simmered, and the argument between Kwadwo and Jelani, though quieter than usual, carried a bitterness that could be tasted in the air. It was then that the elders decided enough was enough. A message was sent, carried by a boy whose feet knew every corner of the market. By sunset, Both men were summoned to the wide roots of the old Irako tree, a place where disputes were cooled and wisdom dispensed. The elders sat in a semicircle, their faces lined with years and patience. They did not rush the matter. They listened, longer than either Kwadwo or Jelani expected, as the two men spoke, interrupted each other, and defended their positions with fierce loyalty. When the talking finally burned itself out, the eldest among them leaned forward. His voice was low, but it carried authority like a deep drumbeat. He spoke of balance, of how passion without restraint became noise, and how noise, when unchecked, eroded respect. Greatness, he said, does not shout its name in the market. It reveals itself in how people live together. Kwadwo nodded, his arms crossed, his pride bruised but intact. Jelani listened with a fixed expression, absorbing the words yet resisting their weight. The elders warned them gently but firmly. The market belonged to everyone, not just two men and their rivalry. Peace, they reminded them, was more valuable than being right. Both men bowed, offered the expected words of respect, and promised to do better. Yet as they walked away from the Irako tree, neither felt convinced. Each believed the elders did not fully understand. The argument, they told themselves, was harmless, a matter of passion, not destruction. And so, when dawn returned and the gong rang once more, Kwadwo and Jelani resumed their places. The elders watched from a distance, wondering whether wisdom had found fertile ground or fallen on stubborn soil. It was not a single argument that broke the friendship between Kwadwo and Jelani, but many small ones, layered day after day like dust on a forgotten shelf. Once, they had shared breakfast before the market opened, laughing over burnt plantain and weak tea. Now they arrived at their stalls at different times, each pretending not to notice the other, yet listening closely for any opening to strike. Their words grew sharper, less playful. Kwadwo began to mock Jelani's love for moments, calling them tricks that faded as quickly as they appeared. Jelani replied by ridiculing statistics, saying they were crutches for those afraid of risk. Each insult landed heavier than the last, because beneath them lay disappointment. Neither man admitted how much it hurt to lose what they once had. Other traders felt the strain. Friends chose sides, or worse, avoided both men entirely. The space between the yam stall and the cloth table became a narrow corridor of tension. Even on days when no argument broke out, the silence between them felt loud, stretched tight like a rope ready to snap. At home, the rivalry followed them. Kwadwo replayed matches not with joy but with bitterness, already preparing words for the next confrontation. Jelani folded cloth late into the night, rehearsing clever replies instead of sleeping. Football, once a pleasure, had become a burden neither man could set down. What they did not realize was how much they were losing. Trust had thinned. Respect had cracked. Friendship, once strong enough to weather disagreement, had begun to fray like old fabric in a strong wind. And as the days passed, neither man noticed that winning the argument no longer mattered. What mattered, though neither would say it aloud, was what had already been broken. The morning the market fell silent began like any other. The gong was struck, its metal voice ringing out across Aburi, calling traders to their stalls and customers to their routines. Kwadwo arrived early, arranging his yams with practiced speed. Jelani followed soon after, spreading his cloth with careful precision. Neither greeted the other. The space between them felt wider than usual, as though something unseen had settled there overnight. But as the sun climbed, something was wrong. The paths that usually filled with footsteps remained bare. The hum of bargaining did not rise. A few traders whispered among themselves, glancing down the road, expecting the crowd to arrive late. It did not. By mid-morning, the truth could no longer be ignored. The market was empty. Kwadwo stood with his hands on his hips, scanning the open space where customers should have been. Jelani did the same, his measuring tape hanging uselessly from his fingers. When they spoke, their voices echoed slightly, bouncing off stalls instead of being swallowed by noise. For the first time in weeks, There was no audience for their rivalry. No laughter, no murmurs, no cheers. Unease crept in slowly. Traders gathered in small groups, sharing rumors. People, it seemed, had chosen to buy elsewhere. They said Aburi Market was no longer peaceful. They said the shouting spoiled the air. They said it was better to walk farther than to stand near constant quarrel. The realization struck harder than any insult. Without customers, pride meant nothing. Victories meant nothing. The rivalry that had once felt powerful now seemed small, exposed under the wide sky. Kwadwo glanced at Jelani, and Jelani glanced back. Neither smiled, neither spoke. In the stillness, the dust settled. And in that quiet, both men felt something unfamiliar and uncomfortable. The weight of responsibility. For the first time, it was clear that the suffering beneath their clash was no longer abstract. The grass was gone, the peace was gone, and the silence asked a question neither was ready to answer. It was near midday when the stranger arrived, his footsteps unhurried, as though he had not noticed the emptiness of the market or perhaps understood it too well. He carried no goods, wore no trader's cloth, and yet moved with the confidence of someone who belonged wherever stories were told. Some said he was a traveler. Others whispered that he was a storyteller. All anyone knew was that he stopped between Kwadwo's yams and Jelani's cloth and listened. He listened for a long time. Kwadwo, unsettled by the silence, found himself speaking again, explaining his devotion, his statistics, his certainty. Jelani followed, describing moments of brilliance, sudden glory, and unforgettable triumphs. The stranger nodded, not agreeing, not disagreeing, only listening, as though weighing something unseen. When both men had finished, the stranger asked a single question, softly delivered but sharp in its reach. "When your player retires," he said, "what will remain?" The words fell into the space between them and stayed there. Neither man answered immediately. Kwadwo opened his mouth, then closed it. Jelani frowned, searching for a reply that would not come. The question did not ask who was greater. It did not ask who was right. It asked about after, about what endured when cheering faded and seasons ended. The stranger thanked them for their time and moved on, his sandals whispering against the dust. He did not wait for an answer. He did not need one. The question had already done its work. For the rest of the day, Kwadwo found himself staring at his yams without seeing them. Jelani folded and unfolded the same piece of cloth. The market remained quiet, but inside both men, something shifted. The rivalry no longer felt complete. It had been cracked open, revealing a hollow neither man knew how to fill. That weekend, both men watched the matches as if the world depended on them. Kwadwo cheered loudly for every precise pass, every assist, every calculated play. Jelani held his breath as his player struck the ball with sudden, breathtaking power, sending it into the net and silencing the stadium in awe. For hours, they were transported from Aburi Market to distant fields filled with roaring fans, flashing cameras, and the smell of grass after rain. Yet when the games ended and the scores were tallied, a strange emptiness settled over them. Kwadwo had witnessed brilliant consistency. Jelani had witnessed unstoppable flashes of genius. Each felt vindicated, each felt triumphant. But the triumph was hollow. Returning to the market, they saw the same empty paths, the same wary customers, the same cautious traders. The market had not cheered with them. The arguments they had poured so much energy into had not restored friendship or filled the silence. The realization was painful. Victories in football could not repair victories in life. They faced each other across the dusty ground, each holding pride in one hand and frustration in the other. For a fleeting moment, the weight of their rivalry seemed absurd. The glory of goals, the drama of moments, the endless statistics, all of it seemed small when compared to the rift between them. The market had suffered quietly while they focused only on themselves. The irony struck them both in a sudden, sharp flash. They had become the storm, not the spectators. Kwadwo and Jelani exchanged a glance neither had given before, honest, almost vulnerable. The crowd of Aburi Market, which should have been waiting, was absent. Their arguments no longer had meaning without an audience. And for the first time, they understood that the fire they had fanned for so long had burned a space around them that no victory could reclaim. The match had changed nothing. The following morning, the market seemed unusually quiet, as if even the wind had decided to take a day off. Kwadwo arrived early, his hands empty, his yams still in the storeroom. He lingered near his stall, not to sell but to think about the empty paths, the absent customers, and the strange question the storyteller had left behind. Jelani approached from the other side, cloth rolled neatly under his arm. The usual spark of confrontation was missing, replaced by a weight neither had expected. Kwadwo spoke first, his voice lower than usual, hesitant. "Jelani," he began, almost as if the words were unfamiliar to him. I've been foolish. I let my pride blind me to what mattered. I missed the mornings we laughed before the market opened, before football became more important than friendship." He paused, searching Jelani's face for a reaction, any sign that his words had meaning. Jelani folded the cloth slowly, his fingers lingering over the patterns as though measuring the sincerity of Kwadwo's confession. Then, softly, almost reluctantly, he said, I feel the same. I spoke of moments, heaped praise on brilliance, and forgot the days we shared. We let rivalry drive away the people, the laughter, and even ourselves. He extended a hand, not in challenge but in truce. "I am sorry, my friend." Kwadwo's chest tightened. He extended his own hand, meeting Jelani's firmly. For the first time in weeks, they felt the tension between them shift, crack, and begin to crumble. Around them, the market seemed to sense the change. A distant laugh of a returning customer sounded sweeter than any cheer from a stadium. A faint breeze stirred the dust into soft eddies, as though the market itself exhaled. And just as they were about to resume trading, a sudden roar rose from the edge of Aburi. A crowd of children chasing a stray ball, shouting, laughing, and mimicking the football heroes they idolized. Kwadwo and Jelani froze, then smiled. The lesson was clear. Greatness could be celebrated. Rivalry could be endured. But peace, laughter, and friendship were victories no league table could measure. For the first time, the market felt whole again, and the men finally understood that some victories last far longer than goals or glory. The days that followed were different. Kwadwo and Jelani returned to their stalls, but the atmosphere no longer carried the tension that had dominated the market for months. Laughter returned to Aburi, not forced or cautious, but warm and unrestrained. Children ran between the stalls, mimicking football moves, cheering loudly for imaginary goals, and for once, both men joined in without thought of rivalry. The traders noticed the change immediately. Bargains resumed with smiles, voices mingled freely again, and elders who had once shook their heads in dismay now nodded with approval. Kwadwo and Jelani, once consumed by arguments about players and statistics, now found joy in small conversations about business, the weather, and their shared memories. The market thrived, not because of fame or victories on distant fields, but because the men had restored the rhythm of cooperation and respect. Yet the lessons went deeper than simply making peace. Kwadwo still watched league tables, still praised consistency, while Jelani still admired brilliance and sudden moments of genius. But neither of them used these differences to attack the other. Instead, they had learned to celebrate them as they would celebrate a shared story or the laughter of children. Competition existed, yes, but it no longer ruled the market. It had been tamed by humility and friendship. That evening, as the sun sank behind the rusted rooftops and painted the dusty paths in orange and gold, the two men sat beneath the old Irako tree. They spoke quietly, sharing insights, laughing softly at old mistakes, and watching the market breathe freely around them. For the first time, Kwadwo and Jelani understood something more important than goals, glory, or applause. The true measure of greatness is not in defeating others, but in creating space for everyone to thrive. And as the stars began to emerge above Aburi Market, It seemed even the universe leaned closer to listen, approving the harmony that had finally returned. Years later, the story of Kwadwo and Jelani became legend in Aburi Market. Elders would tell it to children as they played between stalls, their voices rich with amusement and reverence. They did not speak only of rivalry or football. They spoke of lessons that outlasted goals, tables, and statistics. They spoke of friendship, humility, and the power of restoring peace when pride threatens to consume everything. Kwadwo and Jelani themselves had grown older, their hair flecked with gray, their hands marked with the work of many seasons. Yet whenever they met beneath the old Irako tree, they laughed together as they once had, recalling arguments that had once shaken the market like a storm. And though they still cheered for different players, it was never with venom or mockery, only with joy, acknowledgement, and the shared understanding that greatness can wear many forms, on the field, in the market, or in the hearts of friends. One evening, as the last lanterns flickered and the market quieted, an elder leaned on his staff and whispered to those gathered nearby, "Where two rams once fought, the grass beneath suffered. But here, in Aburi, the two men learned that even in the fiercest clash, peace can be restored. And when it is, it endures far longer than anger, far longer than pride, far longer than fleeting victories. That is the true spirit of greatness." The market, now vibrant and alive, seemed to shimmer in agreement. Children ran across paths that had once been empty, traders laughed and bargained freely, and the dust of past conflicts settled quietly beneath the roots of the Irako tree. Kwadwo and Jelani, standing side by side, looked at the lively crowd, their hearts light. They knew that the greatest victories were never recorded on league tables or in fleeting moments of brilliance, but in the enduring bonds of friendship, the laughter of a thriving community, and the harmony that rises when two souls finally learn to fight with respect, not hatred. And so, Aburi Market lived on, not merely as a place of trade, but as a testament to the truth that some lessons, once learned, shine brighter than any glory on earth. The rivalry that once shook it had become its legend, and its legend had become its lasting peace. Thank you for watching Franca-Stories. Please give us a like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, we love you.